Congressman, good to see you.
Well, good to see you, Maria. I've got to ask, what do you think that one's worth?
Oh, wow. Is that your picture with Muhammad Ali?
Absolutely. Went a couple of rounds. It wasn't a knockout, but he, as you know, he really was a very special human being in addition to being a great athlete. So I think I'll just keep this one.
I love that you have that picture. When did you meet him? How long ago was that?
Well, a couple of times, but we spent more time when we were working on trying to stop interstate boxing, where somebody would get a concussion in one state and then be boxing just a few days later in another. And that was successfully done to stop that, essentially, victimization of boxers who couldn't afford not to fight and were preyed upon, if you will, by boxing in different states, even though they were suffering often from concussions.
Wow. Well, I love that you have that picture, and thank you for sharing that, Congressman. Congratulations to you with your victory yesterday. We want to talk about that and what's driving people today. But let me start where we just left off, and that is on Trump. He's not going to be the only business leader in the administration with his nominations of Wilbur Ross and Steven Mnuchin. What's your take on what we've seen so far, and certainly this victory, as you look at what's gone on with Carrier? Now they're going to keep those 1,000 people here.
Well, I think that Carrier and other businesses right now are re-looking at where the right place to do business is and realizing that America's open for business. Now, that's still going to be determined on how states do. States are going to have to compete, as Indiana did. But the United States is open for business, and that means foreign investment here. It means a decision to build here. And particularly when you look at President-elect Trump's energy vision, one in which he wants to dramatically expand our ability to start with source energy and then turn it into products, so that to the extent we're exporting, we'll be exporting refined petroleum products and other items like that. So I think it all fits together. Low-cost energy, good, solid workforce, properly trained and motivated, makes America competitive. And I think that's what the Carrier story is going to be, along with thousands of others.
And so it's an opening up of business. It's a rolling back of regulations. That's what Steve Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross told me yesterday when we talked about regulation. Listen to what they had to say about the last 2 years, Congressman.
Well, yeah, there were something like 3,000 a year in each of the last 2 years. Now, do you really think the U.S. was such a wild and woolly place 2 years ago that we needed 6,000 or 7,000 more regulations? I don't think so.
Wow. 6,000 new regulations in the last 2 years, Congressman Issa. I mean, you're a former CEO yourself. What gives with these new regulations in the last 2 years?
Well, the president's been on a buying spree at the end to try to cram through a lot of pent-up desire to regulate everything. And what you see there is a particular harm to small business. And I think that's going to be the story of the Trump administration is, you know, large companies can put on large staffs to take care of regulatory compliance. But as you get to be mom and pop, or a handful or a few hundred workers like my old company, what happens is you don't have the bandwidth for that, and so it tends to cost you the same amount, but you can't defray it over as many dollars, and it really makes America less competitive. I think the other part of what you're seeing is right now on some of the other networks, they're complaining that maybe there's too many business people, too many Wall Street people coming into this administration. What's funny is just before the election, if you remember, it was going to be Wall Street will crash if this man wins election, that he's going to be so bad for that segment of the economy, and just the opposite. We've had records under the Trump-elect scenario, and I think that bodes well for both the financial markets, but also for the underlying American markets of creating jobs here in America.
Congressman, quick question for you on the repatriation. We see it's a bipartisan issue. Hillary Clinton had it pegged at 15%, Donald Trump at 10%. Last time it happened, it was at 5% in 2004. We saw 843 companies brought back about $312 billion, but they did not earmark it for hiring workers or, conducting research. Do you think that should be a condition on that coming over, considering it didn't happen last time?
Well, I think, first of all, I was here for that, but I have to be candid. You know, President-elect Trump has picked some very, very smart people to participate in that I think are going to look at it thoroughly. I've talked to Stephen Moore and Art Laffer and a lot of the other key advisors. But maybe the best answer is this. First of all, we need to bring back more. There's a lot more. There's trillions trapped. Secondly, we need to make fundamental changes so that it not happen again, which means that bringing back this one-time repatriation has to be linked to a tax policy change that means we're not doing this periodically under the Bush and then under Trump and then under some future administration. So I think when you put the two together, it's not as important about whether it's 10% or 5% or something in between. It's about the kind of change that causes American dollars, if they're to be paid in taxes, to be paid here in America and not stranded overseas. As you know, there's been gamesmanship with many of those dollars. Many companies have effectively brought it back in the form of a loan, paid it out in a dividend, and that's one of the reasons that it's so complex to get the repatriation is, candidly, some of the money's already back here, but taxes haven't been paid on it.
Congressman, Democrats won 3 million fewer House votes than Republicans, but they still reelected Nancy Pelosi as their leader. Make sense of that.
Well, I guess in the land of the blind, the one-eyed woman is queen. The fact is that Nancy Pelosi has consolidated power over the years, but I think what's important for you to look at, and I don't want to look into the other party overly, but the changes that were announced last night after her win, putting the DCCC back into independent hands by comparison, that's a change in the power structure of Nancy Pelosi that will probably bode well for the future of the Democrats. I will say in my own case, they put nearly $8 million into trying to defeat me. Over 4 of it was directed by Nancy Pelosi, even though the fact was I was never a good bet to defeat any more than some of the others that Nancy made on a personal basis. So I think that's part of why, yes, she won re-election, but she had to make concessions that hopefully will make the Democratic side of the House more democratic.
Right, and also it feels like Tim Ryan is onto something. He's not going anywhere. And of course, yesterday when Stephen Mnuchin joined us, he also talked about government control, bigger government, and making it smaller. In particular, he talked about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in terms of his plans. Here's what he told us yesterday. I'd like to get your reaction, Congressman.
We got to get Fannie and Freddie out of government ownership. It makes no sense that these are owned by the government and have been controlled by the government for as long as they have. In many cases, this displaces private lending in the mortgage markets, and we need these entities that will be safe. So let me just be clear. We'll make sure that when they're restructured, they're absolutely safe and they don't get taken over again, but we got to get them out of government control.
These are huge institutions. Is that doable?
It is doable, and like any journey of 1,000 miles, you have to take the first step. In the time since the end of the Bush administration, throughout the entire Obama administration, no one's taken the first step. We have to stop doing many things, including using them as piggy banks so that they never really get to where they can be independent again. But I think what Stephen said that was so important was he said we have to make them safe. These are going to be large private or public-private organizations for a considerable period of time. We can't let them go back to the kind of reckless behavior, many of the scandals that we saw before they went into, well before they went into receivership. So I do think he's onto something. The first step is important, which is that we need a plan that's going to make a difference in who owns them.